Hey guys, and welcome to the Manhattan Podcast. This is episode 1. Newspapers didn't die. News didn't die, newspapers did. And when newspapers died, the news industry actually became bigger, faster, more valuable, more profitable than ever before because the need didn't disappear. The delivery method changed. Welcome to Manhattan. Manhattan connects capital to private credit markets and real-world opportunities that were previously inaccessible to most investors. But before we talk about capital markets, we want to talk about newspapers, because the story of what happened to the news industry is one of the most important business lessons of the last 30 years. And almost no one has applied it correctly to what's happening in finance right now. Cast your mind back to the 1990s. Newspapers were extraordinary businesses. They didn't just control the news, they controlled the entire information economy of their cities and regions. They owned the classifieds, every job listing, every apartment rental, every car for sale. They owned local advertising, every retailer, every restaurant, every business that wanted to reach a local audience came to them. They owned the real estate listings. They owned the auto ads. A major metropolitan newspaper wasn't just a media company. It was a vertically integrated information monopoly. And they were extraordinarily profitable because of it. Then the internet arrived, and something very specific happened. Something that gets misunderstood almost every time it's discussed. People didn't stop wanting news. They stopped wanting yesterday's news. Think about that shift for a moment. For over a century, the newspaper had a structural advantage. It was the only scalable way to deliver information to a mass audience simultaneously. The morning edition was a marvel of logistics. Printed overnight, delivered by dawn, read over breakfast. But the internet didn't just make news faster. It made news immediate, on demand, updated by the minute, accessible anywhere, on a device that fits in your pocket. The need for news didn't disappear. The need for immediacy increased. And here is a central idea behind everything we discuss at Manhattan. Technology doesn't remove demand. Technology increases demand by making things faster, easier, cheaper, and more accessible. When news moved online, people didn't read less news. They checked the news more often. They read more articles per day. They spent more total time with media content than ever before. Advertising didn't disappear. It became more targeted, more measurable, more valuable. Subscriptions didn't disappear. They went digital and scaled globally. Local audiences didn't disappear. They were joined by international ones. The news industry didn't shrink when it went digital. It grew substantially. What shrunk, though, what collapsed entirely, was the set of companies that refused to move with it. Some newspaper companies saw what was happening and made a choice. They stopped thinking of themselves as newspaper companies, and they started thinking of themselves as media companies. That distinction sounds simple. It wasn't. It meant moving from print to digital before the digital was proven. It meant building websites when websites were experimental. It meant investing in video when video online was barely watchable. It meant competing globally when they had only ever competed locally. It meant building subscription businesses when they had only ever sold advertising. They didn't protect the old business, they built the new one. And the businesses that made that bet, that chose adaptation over protection, are still operating today, larger than they were before the internet arrived. The ones that didn't, gone. So what are the actual lessons here, guys? There are 4, and they matter far beyond the news industry. First, the need rarely disappears. The delivery method changes. People needed news. They always will. What changed was how that need was met. Second, when delivery becomes digital, demand usually increases, not decreases. The friction of the old system was suppressing demand. Remove the friction and you discover how much appetite was always there. Third, immediacy creates more engagement, more time spent, and more revenue opportunities, not fewer. The newspaper that published once a day created one engagement event. The digital platform that publishes continuously creates thousands. Fourth, and this is the most important one, technology usually makes industries bigger, but different companies win. News became the bigger industry, travel became a bigger industry, music became a bigger industry, retail became a bigger industry, movies became a bigger industry. The industries didn't die, the old companies did. And this is part of the story that the next episode picks up. Because offices used to run on paper, mail, and fax machines, and then email, PDFs, and digital workflows arrived. And the entire businesses operated changed forever. The entire way businesses operated changed forever. But we'll come back to that, guys. Right now, we want to bring this back to why any of this matters for investors. The reason we tell these stories at Manhattan is not nostalgia. It's not business school case studies for their own sake. It's because the same transition, the exact same structural shift is happening in capital markets right now. Capital isn't disappearing. Lending isn't disappearing. Private credit isn't disappearing. Investing isn't disappearing. But the way capital moves is changing. Think about what investors actually want in 2026. They want access to opportunities that were previously reserved for institutions. They want transparency to understand what their capital is doing and why. They want speed, faster deal flow, faster subscriptions, faster redemptions. They want returns that are uncorrelated to public market volatility. They want to be part of a network, not just a transaction. Just like people wanted news immediately, on demand, on their terms, investors now want access to private markets immediately, on demand, and on their terms. The private capital industry is not going to disappear, but the infrastructure through which capital moves is being rebuilt from the ground up. And when that happens, when the delivery method of an entire industry changes, the industry doesn't shrink. It gets bigger. Different companies win. This is what Manhattan was built to understand. We study how industries change. We identify where the real opportunities sit inside that change. And we connect capital to those opportunities before they become obvious to everyone else. That's not a pitch, that's a philosophy. Precision capital, real opportunity. And before we close this episode, I have one final thought. The newspaper didn't fail because the internet was too powerful. It failed because it chose to protect the printing press instead of following the reader. The travel agent didn't fail because people stopped traveling. It failed because it protected the transaction instead of following the traveler. Blockbuster didn't fail because people stopped watching movies. It failed because it protected the store instead of following the audience. Kodak didn't fail because people stopped taking photographs. It failed because it protected the film instead of following the moment. The lesson is not complicated. Follow the need, not the format. The need for yield doesn't change. The need for access doesn't change. The need for intelligent capital allocation doesn't change. What changes is how that need gets met. And the firms that understand that move with delivery method, not against it, are the firms that will define private capital markets for the next generation. This has been episode 1 of the Manhattan series. In the next episode, we look at what happened to the office and what it tells us about the future of institutional infrastructure. If you want to be part of what comes next in private capital markets, visit us at manhattanprivatecredit.com. And remember, don't be Blockbuster, don't be Kodak, don't be the newspaper that kept printing. See you in the next episode, guys. Thank you.